all for joining us this evening for another webinar Wednesday. I am Jamie Middleton. I'm one of the program officers at Humanities AR, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the major grant, its LOI, and some grant guideline updates we've had over the last couple years. And so to just kind of get started, our major grant cycle is our largest grant award. It is also our most broad and encompassing grant initiative that we offer here at Humanities AR. It is a maximum award of $15,000. We also require a cost share for this particular initiative at a 50-50 or a 1-to-1 match, as some people call it. And that's just saying however much you request of us, you also contribute as your organization. So for instance, if you're requesting $10,000 for a project, you would then contribute $10,000 from your organization, whether it's in cash or in kind. This could look like dues for your organization, membership dues, or it could be a salary contribution for hours worked within your organization. We are currently in cycle 1 of this major grant cycle. We're accepting letter of intents from June 15th through the end of this month, which is why we thought it would be a good time for us to hold this webinar. So that way, if you're looking into submitting an LOI for this current cycle, that way you have all the information you might have or want to need to submit that on time. And so with this webinar, there's going to be a lot of information, and I'm so sorry to dump all of this information on you. Feel free to ask questions as we go along in the chat. Our Associate Director, Adrian Jones, will be monitoring that as we go. At the end of the presentation, I'll be taking questions, whether you want to call those out or in the chat, whichever. So we're going to go through the process from beginning to the submission of your application. So to start off, just generally eligibility, eligible organizations for Humanities AR grants, especially for the major grant, are 501c3 nonprofits or tax-exempt organizations. That could be a higher ed institution, a museum, a library, or a nonprofit generally. This organization that is applying must be able to provide IRS determination letters, an EIN or an employment identification number, and a UEI or a unique entity ID that would verify your organization's tax exemption status. Broadly speaking, eligible projects for the major grant are humanities in focus. At the heart of the project, we look for humanities content and that the project fall within one of our approved categories. Those approved categories are a number of types of projects, from public programs to documentary film. Depending on the project type you're looking at doing, we do have different maximum awards. So if you're looking at doing individual research, publications, or documentary film pre-production, those maximum amounts are lower than our other project categories. What you cannot use major grant funds towards in broad projects, construction, preservation, and renovation of buildings, bridges, roads, creative performing arts, international travel, scholarly conferences that don't have a strong public outreach component, murals, restoration or conservation work. The other things within this list, which is not an exhaustive list, cannot be put within the approved categories. So if you're doing a public program in which you're bringing in speakers to talk, you cannot pay for their food and beverage for the duration of their visit. You cannot pay for international travel as well. So for the types of projects, public programs involve an interaction between humanities scholars and an audience. This can look like lectures, discussions, workshops, or conferences, guided tours, webinars, and so on. There's a number of ways a public program can look, but generally it involves that humanities scholar and an audience. Research can be done individually and collaboratively on topics such as Arkansas prehistory, history, and culture. The outcomes of the research must be of interest and value to audiences outside of the academic community. We're looking for projects that not only enhance academic scholarship in the humanities, but is amenable and wanted by a community, and that it impacts a community as well outside of academia. Publications on topics such as prehistory, history, culture, and or other scholarly works are available. We do require that the transcript of the proposed publication be submitted with your application. We have changed our publishing by traditional means for the exceptions of small organizations that cannot afford the peer review or traditional means to publish. Small organizations are able to submit for publishing grants to self-publish on a case-by-case basis. Documentary film can come in pre-production and production projects. Those projects must be specific to Arkansas subjects, whether it be as historical figures or events, culture, archaeology, history of a community or organization, activities, music, or similar topic. So in pre-production, we don't require as much information as productions. In the production of your documentary, we would need the copy of your script in addition to the filmographer, their expertise. We would also need an editing suite, your distribution plan, and any consent forms for those being interviewed for the documentary, if that is applicable. As far as other media projects, that is our catch-all, which is not limited to exhibits, whether they be in person or virtual, humanities-based website content, historical signage or markers, podcasts, webinars, and virtual tours. Some of that does kind of overlap with our public programs, but it does give you a little more wiggle room for your project. And so moving on to the requirements, once you've taken stock and inventory of your tax exemption documents, your project, the idea that you have for your project, and an initial budget, you'll submit an LOI or letter of intent. That is just a preliminary form for us to verify your organization's tax exemption status and to look at your project description and initial project budget. You will need to submit your LOI no later than the July 31st deadline to be eligible for this cycle. Approved LOIs will go on to that application stage. And so here you will submit your employment identification number, your letter of determination from the IRS, and your unique entity ID. It is required that that number be active and registered throughout the grant period. That's not just ID assigned where you get the number. We do need it to be fully registered for the duration of the project. If it lapses in the middle of the grant period, we'll let you know just to make sure that gets renewed so you're in compliance throughout the grant project. The project description will clearly and concisely describe what you're doing for this grant project. It'll be clear to us who is involved, what activities are taking place throughout that grant period, and especially strong proposals. It'll give an indication of how grant funds will be used. In addition to that, we will be asking for initial project budgets. It's just simply outlining what your project's costs are looking like. It doesn't need to be finalized at this stage. And we're not requiring quotes with this initial project budget. We will require that for your application. We're just looking to see a clear determination of how AHC funds will be used and what you're expecting to bring in as your cost share. And that all of this aligns with your project as described. So in a flowchart form, this is our LOI and application process. We are in this letter of intent stage. Once you've submitted your letter of intent, it will go to staff for review to look for the verification of your tax exemption and those description and budget items. Once staff has reviewed, please give us 1 to 2 weeks to look over all of that for you. We will submit recommendations, whether if it's ineligible as far as like a project or what you're requesting funds for. We will send it back to you and give you feedback as far as recommendations, whether that is to tailor your project a little differently to apply for another cycle, or if a different grant initiative or grant program is a better fit for your project. There are times that we'll ask an organization to resubmit their LOI. We'll provide you feedback if there's issues with your tax exemption, or if we're looking for a little more information as far as your project description or your budget. We'll send that to you and have you resubmit your letter of intent, and it'll go back through that review process. Once your LOI is approved, It'll move on to the application stage, which will be due September 15th. Once you've submitted your application, staff will start reviewing in September after that September 15th deadline. Once staff has reviewed your application, we'll send out requests for corrections, additional budget documentation. Complete and thorough applications is what we're looking for, and that's what we're helping you try to do. Once we've had the batch of applications that we have make it through this process, all of those will go to our board review, where they will deliberate and make decisions on funding of those projects. As far as requirements for your grant application, once your LOI is approved, we look for grant period information. That is broadly, when is your grant taking place? This can happen anytime between December 1st of this year and November 30th of next year. You will have 1 year to be able to complete your project, expend all funds, and complete all of your reporting within that December 1 to November 30th timeframe. We'll also look for your finance contact information. Your fiscal agent is the person responsible for at your organization for receiving and dispersing grant payments. You, as the project director or the applicant, cannot also serve as the fiscal agent. We need a second person to be able to do that. And this will be the person who will work with our CFO to make sure your grant payments are going out on time and that all of the reporting is done in a timely and complete manner. We also really hone in on that humanities content, basically asking which disciplines of the humanities does this project cover and how is that area utilized and highlighted in your project. To help with this, we also ask for humanities scholars to be involved with your project. These are individuals who have expertise in a particular field of study that pertain to the humanities. And so we look for scholars on your project that have very intimate and expert knowledge in the project that you're looking to have funded and that you're looking at doing. We do ask that you have one scholar that is not, one, the project director or applicant, and two, is outside of your organization that is applying. It gets a little tricky with your higher ed institutions. If you're applying from a particular department in your college, you'll need someone from outside of your department to be able to sit on as your humanities scholar. Or if you're an organization and you're looking for a humanities expert, you can go to a college for a humanities scholar. We're currently working on a database to be able to help folks who don't have a network of humanities scholars be able to find people who would be a good fit for their project and being able to help them plan and evaluate their projects. In addition to both of those, we ask questions about project planning, and that how is your project planned? How will it be evaluated? What are the metrics of success for your project? Whether it's an event or an exhibit or a publication, what does that look like? Who is the audience for your project proposal? And how will they be impacted? What communities are being affected or are you hoping to reach with your project? What is the publicity or distribution plan? If you're doing a public program or event, how are you reaching people? And what is your plan for bringing those people in? For projects such as publications and documentary films, we ask for transcripts, biography, and scripts for those particular projects. So what are the humanities is a question we get a lot, and how is it different from the arts? They are one, and you can't have one without the other. In my opinion, they rely so heavily on each other, but we do have to make a distinction. Humanities are academic disciplines that study aspects of human society and culture. There is a long and varied list depending on who you ask what humanities are. But for us, we tend to include archaeology, art history, cultural anthropology, ethics, ethnic studies, and so on in this long list in the middle paragraph. And then arts tend to include theater, dance, music, and visual art forms. They are often influenced and intertwined with the humanities, but I really like the way our counterpart in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin humanities, say, to keep it simple, the arts do, the humanities talk about it. Now, that's not to say you can't have arts be in your project. It just cannot be the center of your project. And so in a more visual way, in how humanities and arts work together in ways you can bring in the arts to your project. If you were to say, be doing an art exhibit or working with an arts museum or organization, bringing in folks who do interpretation, the interpretation becomes that humanities content. Being able to bring in experts in anthropology or folk studies or so on and so forth, that would help you bring in that humanities content and not be simply an art project. In addition to the project itself and that description, we ask for budget, summary, explanation, and additional documentation. So we provide in the application fillable PDF forms where you will be able to submit your estimates for this project. The summary numerically demonstrates funds requested and cost share secured. These itemized numerical amounts should reflect the explanation that is provided. So the top sheet is kind of a spreadsheet, and then the second sheet is an explanation of those figures and how you got there. The explanation verbally and numerically justifies your budget summary and your grant request. It's an itemized explanation of the totals and general justification of why you're asking for X amount for honoraria or X amount for printing or X amount for travel. We do require documentation or quotes for figures that are not federal or state rates. So that would be if you're printing community guides for an exhibit. We would ask that you give us a quote from your selected printer and how much that is going to cost at the stage of applying for this grant. So if you're applying to print 100 community guides to go with the exhibit you're planning, we would ask that you contact this person or this organization to give you a quote and how much that would cost. If we require additional information for your budget, we will reach out. We want to help you as much as possible, present the strongest, most complete application you can. And so don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. We will not hesitate to reach out to ask you for additional documentation. We've talked a lot about what you cannot use funds for, but these are broad categories of what you can use major grant funds for. So that would be travel expenses, domestic, whether that be in mileage or airfare. So if you're bringing in speakers for a conference, mileage is one of those federal or state rates. So federal mileage right now is, I think, 0.67. So you would take the round trip miles from where they're coming from and going and multiply that by the federal mileage rate to get what you would pay them for their mileage. That would be an example of a federal rate. If you're mailing postcards as a part of your advertising, there is a current postal rate for postage stamps, and you would use that as kind of your rate to estimate how much you would request for postage. Additionally, you can do personnel costs, whether that be honoraria or salary and wage. So if you're doing a digitization project and you need to hire someone to do that, you are able to hire someone and be able to pay them with the grant. You can also use funding for supplies and materials, whether those be books or generally books and other materials you would need for a project. Printing and duplicating, you can do that for printing of mailers, printing of exhibit panels, printing for advertising, handouts, and so on. Equipment rental or purchase, we do have a cap of $1,000 for equipment rental or equipment purchase. In that category, if you do intend to purchase an item with your grant, you would need to write in your budget explanation what the life plan of that object is. So if you're buying a printer for a classroom, which I've had happen, they gave me a quote from Walmart what their printer cost was going to be. They told me that they had planned to use the printer for the project they were doing, and that it would continue to be serving as a community printer in his classroom beyond the project. And then postage and mailing as another general category that funds can be used for. This again is a list of ineligible expenses. We have the full list on our website. And again, because of federal funding, we have to be real sticklers about how funds are being used and how they are presented in your budget. So if we're being a little ticky, it is for that reason. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. We do have a step-by-step process on our website and how to apply for our grants. If you go to the grants tab on our website and go to the application guidelines, it has a step-by-step of what we ask from you, how to fill out the budget forms, eligible and ineligible expenses, and you can also download a copy of our PDF grant guidelines as they stand now. And so as of 2023, we've had some new changes. And so printing costs are capped at 25% of a proposal's overall budget. Speaker fees and honoraria will be allowed at a maximum of 1,000 per speaker, with a total for honoraria of 5,000. So you could, depending on how you break it down, 5 speakers at 1,000 each would be the maximum we would allow for your grant proposal. You can break it down smaller than that, as long as the overall ask is not more than 5,000. Additionally, we have requested that humanities scholars, at least one, be outside of your organization that is applying. If there's more people apply who are serving as humanities scholars in your organization, they will also be included, but the principal will need to be from outside of your organization. Publications, as I mentioned, there will be an exception made for small nonprofit organizations to self-publish rather than do contracted traditional publishing. We do still ask for a copy of the transcript and that additional humanities scholars be on the project for a third-party peer review. The newest one that is now affecting some of our grantees is that organizations that have received 3 consecutive years of funding for the same project will not be allowed to apply for a grant for that specific project for 2 consecutive years. They may, however, continue to apply for grants for different projects. Examples of this include annual conferences or seminars, workshops, media production, pre-production, and long-term exhibits on the same subject. We would love to see as many applications as we can. We do want to ask that we see new projects from time to time. We would love to help if you have any questions and how you can move forward. If you have questions about project ideas, feel free to reach out. We are all more than happy to assist you in that capacity. So again, we are here to talk about major grants, maximum award of $15,000 with a cost share of 50-50 or 1-to-1. We are accepting letter of intents until July 31st. This is our grants team here at Humanities AR. I am Jamie. Adrian is here with us as our associate director. Jama Best, our executive director, could not be here this evening. Katie Daly is our chief financial officer. She is the one who will be handling grant payments and fund disbursements if your proposal is funded. And then Asia Webster also could not be here this evening, and she is our 4th in evaluating major grants. If you have any questions, again, I know I threw a lot of information at you. Feel free to reach out to us, check out our website. We are more than happy to walk you through the process. If you want to have a Zoom call and be able to talk things through, we're more than happy to do that.